but we talk about brands in this industry. You guys are the Coca-Cola of the lighting world. We'd say it all the time. If you go in and order a Coke, right, and they're like, "Ooh, I'm sorry, we only have Pepsi." They're apologizing that they don't have the thing that you asked for because they know it's not as good.
I mean, there were suspension companies that had their own light bar line. I mean, at SEMA show, you walked down like South Hall.
Yeah.
I literally thought, man, like KC HiLites was this big conglomerate, right? I was like, I'm out of LA. I'm like, KC HiLites? Man, that's the Baja off-road lighting company that wants a marketing manager, right? And I was like, that can't be right.
We're going to create the coolest fucking looking light where when they look at this shit, it's like...
It's really great to kind of see how you got to where you're at now is definitely a big portion of it. And then we talk about where you're at now and where you're going, company-wise, personal-wise, things like that. It's not just a one big commercial. You know, I think it's important for listeners to always to get to know the human beings behind the companies.
Sure. Yeah, no, first of all, thank you for reaching out and having us on the show. We're all fans. I mean, Taylor's a huge fan. Randy's a huge fan. We actually don't do a lot of these.
Okay.
We had a few people reached out, and the reason why we did this one is because Randy and Taylor are huge fans, and it's because I just don't like talking about us a lot. I just, you know, like my own story is like who's gonna care, you know? So
you'd be surprised how it connects with a lot of the customers and just have a little personal relationship.
Yeah, we've been blown away too about how something small in a finance guy's background, or you know, starting his own business and shower stuff, leads to a guy that's, you know, hired his first employee at a hot rod shop in North Dakota that sends an email and like, "Oh my God, that hit home so much." And you're like, man, you guys couldn't be on two opposite ends of the spectrum, but here in that struggle of getting started and doing this, whatever. I mean, we hear it all the time. Guys are in the shop at, you know, 2 a.m. They're working, you know, trying to get this thing off the ground. And they're like, man, I was just fixing to go home and say, screw it. And I'm listening to this and I'm like, you know what? I went through and I saw the sun came up. I'm like, that's probably poor life choices for like your body, but hey, get after it.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, you know, this world, this life is made up of humans, right? And humans need story, and they need to be inspired, and sometimes they just need to be heard. And I think podcasts and things like this it's like a huge reach, and you never know who's needing what at what moment, you know. But the fabric that's between all of us is like all these stories, right? Origin stories, like struggle stories, achievement stories, and that's what human needs. Like humans need story, you know. Yeah. So, you know, our story is we're obviously a lighting company. It's been around the block. In short, we're on I like to say our third generation of ownership. Pete Brown started the company. His stepson bought the company in 2004. And we bought the company from his stepson in 2014, 2015. But we are an off-road lighting company. Our origin story is Pete used to drive, you know, on dirt roads, go camping, and there just wasn't enough light from the OEM headlights or auxiliary lights at the time. And he said, fuck it, I need to create something that I can see with. And he started putting things together, and 55 years later, we're still putting things together and solving problems. And although the what people want and what people need has changed, you know, we still carry that torch that Pete lit, you know, as far as innovation and creativity and a desire to just make a difference with something that we create. So I'm currently leading the company, and Randy is our marketing activations manager. So I'll let him talk more about it, but he manages relationships like this, engagements, events, a lot of our ambassadors. We do a lot of like outreach and really organic connections with people out there, you know, that have similar passions and have a need for lighting. So
So Randy's the guy we talked to get light bars on the Raptors. I've picked that up. We're not even into this thing, and I've already picked up who's the who.
I was expecting a more tactful entry into that.
Oh yeah, no, fuck it.
As long as Alan approves and Taylor approves the budget, yeah, of course, man, no problem. But yeah, I mean, yeah, besides the product guy or the media guy that talks to you folks or ambassadors and in general, just the community, right? I mean, it's a fairly big community, and we appreciate just working with everybody out there, just in the automotive space. It's just awesome, and I think besides like Alan's origin story, I'm going to take it from my perspective, from what I've seen when I was recruited about almost 7 years ago by his brother, Andy Wang. And I literally thought, man, like KC HiLites was this big conglomerate, right? I was like, I'm out of LA. I'm like, KC HiLites, man, that's the Baja off-road lighting company that wants a marketing manager, right? And I was like, that can't be right. so not accidentally, I just clicked OK apply on LinkedIn, and next thing you know, I get like an email and a call from Alan's brother, and I was like, what's going on? And sure enough, within like a week, 2 weeks, man, like we were ramping it up to where it's like Andy's calling me about like the actual job, and he's told his story about like how the Wang family has been around with Pete Brown since the 70s. There's pictures of their father with Pete Brown. I mean,
oh, wow.
and even Alan, literally with a KC hat in the warehouse, like, well, I think he's always said this, but he's like, I've gotten high off of like the WD-40 that I would, literally use on the chrome daylighters.
Hey,
right?
we've all got our things, man. Yep. We've all got our
right?
things.
As he's polishing them, I was like, damn, dude, that's an awesome story. Like, that's just, like I actually know the CEO, and he, obviously he's a very humble guy. But I think like what it is just, it's a family business. Most people don't know that. And I'm just part of it, right? I've been fortunate enough to be on this ride, at least for the last almost 7 years now. But yeah, man, I remember seeing like the Bigfoot trucks, the Ivan Stewart, you name it, dude.
It was everywhere.
80s, 90s, dude. It's just, Back to the Future, right? Goonies. Like it's part of that whole nostalgia. And it reminds me every single time when we go out to like these events and people are just coming out of the woodworks. You're like, what in the world? Like just recently, I just came back with our events team, Christina and Jaden, and we were at Smoky Mountain Jeep Invasion. We've always heard about it. And we thought it was just a small regional show, and it blew us out of the water with the amount of people that love the brand and actually looked and found us just to go talk shop. You know what I mean? And talk about the nostalgia, talk about their grandfather that used to own the Jeep or a truck or whatever. Oh man! I love those stories. You know what
I want to know. I want to know. You had that impression of KC, and then how bad did you? How overdressed were you for your first day?
Oh man, I sort of this actually happened. I'm glad you brought that up
because I know exactly where your mindset was going, and I know how you went in to present yourself, and you're like, oh shit, I look out of place.
Nice
dude,
structure.
So it was so funny when Andy said, okay, so you're gonna have this interview, and it's gonna be like a panel interview with some of the other managers at the time, and he's all like, just it'll be casual. And I was like, okay, but I worked for a Fortune 500 company. So I was like, to me, casual means like at least khaki pants and a polo shirt, right? so I was like, nah, forget that, dude. So I went in with a suit, suited and booted, and had a presentation ready to go. And that was my experience. And then I see Alan with his t-shirt and a hat, and everybody else, I was like, okay, I guess this is super chill.
You made an impression. You stood out.
Honestly, so I've been there, and I'm here for the ride. And dude, it's just been epic. Just being part of this legacy brand and being around for 50 plus years, and just starting this new chapter, right, with the Wang family. And dude, it's a heck of a ride. I mean, I think Alan. I know Alan realizes this, but I mean he's leading one of the biggest brands in the world, right? I mean, it's a family brand. I mean, for you guys to even reach out for like other brand partners that we work with, it's just a good feeling, man. I mean, and we really appreciate just being here.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I wanted to ask you, Alan, too, because he kind of alluded to the fact Randy did on you've been there since a little kid, right?
Yeah.
And at what point in time growing up, at what point did it dawn on you that holy shit, this is a big brand? Like this got a lot of respect. At what age did you start picking that up?
Last week, maybe.
Okay.
Up until that point, I still thought Pia was the best brand in the world. I mean, I grew up with Hondas, so all we wanted are Pias and those iridescent fog lamps. So
are they still around?
Pia? They are. Yeah. Okay. They're still around. Yeah, Hella, Pia. I mean, all the iconic sort of lighting brands are still around. They're just
Hella was that was European, what you put on a BMW. Pia is what you put in your Prelude bumper, though.
Exactly. Yeah. Prelude, CR, yeah, Honda hatchback. So
I grew up in the same era.
I want to say because although we bought the business in 2014, my dad and Pete they started doing business in the early 80s. So I've been around it my whole life, and I think being a kid growing up with it, everything's normal to you. You know what I mean? And so, like to Randy's point, I do remember just the feeling of the red kind of cloth rags and the smell of WD-40, and we polished a lot of daylighters. I mean, my dad and his team, they did a lot of the contract manufacturing. So, but realistically, it would be probably in 2004 is when I came back to the family business, and when I supported Pete's stepson, and I started going to SEMA more, and I started going to the Baja 1000, and I started going to even the off-road expos and the Keystone Big Shows. And I mean, to Randy's point, it doesn't matter if it's an industry contact Michael introduced me to. Michael's the stepson. You get a very strong sense of what you're doing, what you're dealing with, and what you're doing. And so I think probably early 2000 when I came back to work for the family business is when I really understood why we polished those housings, and where they actually went and who actually used them. And that I think it's kind of like, when I went to college for 2 years, and then it was a dot-com boom. And so I left and worked, for 2-3 years before I went back to college. Right. When I went back to college, I appreciated the shit out of everything, because I think having worked, and sometimes you're doing some accounting and sometimes you're doing some business development, and you go back and you the professor's teaching you, and then you see something in the book and there's an exercise, you realize, because you actually had to use that already, but you're learning the fundamentals of something and it makes sense to you because you actually had to do it, you appreciate it. And that's the same thing with KC. It was like, I grew up with it. I kind of knew what it was. I would prefer Pias at that time. But when I came back to it, I was, had much more experience, much more maturity, and much more ability to understand the context, and it was very interesting because then it all kind of made sense, full circle, oh, this is what that is. So
at that point in time, you mentioned Pia and you mentioned the other interests that you were in, right? And then that's a portion of it, just personal interest. Then there's the personal part of growing up in it, like you said, become numb to it, right? So it's not a thing that you analyze from afar; it's a thing that you're living, right? So you don't take any of that stuff as seriously. Not as seriously. It's the wrong way to say it, but you're not looking at it as an aspirational brand like other people do because you're living in the brand, right? It's just part of Dad's work, and I go there and I help out and I do the things. Was it also a sense? And I don't mean this. I'm from the South, so everybody's going to understand. At that point in time, was it too Americana hillbilly brand from what your personal interests were to aspire? Like you said, you go to college, then you appreciate it after the fact.
I just think that didn't fit in the bumper covers.
Well, that was that too. You could fit it in an Evo bumper.
Yeah. No, I don't think necessarily it was any specific structural or cultural structure of hillbilly or not hillbilly. I just didn't grow up around off-road trucks, right? I mean, my dad always owned Camaros and Mustangs, and I grew up around that. The smell of the leather, smell of the oil, engine oil. Like I know what I like. Those are foundational memories for me that bring me back. Like some of those cartoons like Ratatouille, where you take a bite and it brings you back to that core
Yeah.
memory. Like I have that. But trucks and off road though, that wasn't a part of my core memory. But being around life, so it wasn't so much like the type of you know like cultural
Demographic. Right.
structure. Yeah, it was just like I didn't do that stuff. Like a lot of my friends were the preludes and all that stuff. So I think it was more that. But man, how lucky I am though, that my dad got involved in this industry. Our core family business outside of KC is to contract manufacture and help design products, and that goes beyond off-road. We work with companies in the engine performance space, from oil pans to valve covers, um, and I mean, these are like 70-year-old brands, and there are still employees that when I started in '04 are still there, and uh, there's just so much history, and how lucky we are to be a part of, at KC, not only preserving that, but also like preserving through telling and telling the stories, but also we have a responsibility to generate the next generation of those same stories. Um, in the previous 5-6 decades, it was about uh, entrepreneurship and sometimes survival. Um, I think we have a much more different basket of things to grapple with now. Um, I mean, you look at COVID. I feel like my dad always jokes in Taiwan or in Asia, you have to like all people like 18, they go to the military for like 2 years, right? You eat rice where, I mean, it's fly infested. You go, it's basically boot camp, and I'm grateful because for a lot of us, either working at businesses or owning businesses or being a leader or a manager in a business during COVID, I mean, it was a new boot camp, a new boot camp on survival. So we're just very grateful to be a part of this kind of Americana, Um, and to me, it doesn't matter like what culture or ethnicity or whatever. At the end of the day, when shit happens, like at KC, we work together and we work very hard at developing mental and psychological tools to help us understand how to do that, because it's inevitable, that we're going to butt heads and have differences and maybe not agree, But at the end of the day, if we're not moving in the same direction, we're gonna be fucked. So, um, my point is, we're lucky that this symbol of this circle and these letters, it gives us a why. It gives us a strong why, because we have a responsibility to uphold the legacy and then pave a path for the future. Um, and like in Mandalorian, when they say this is the way, it's a similar thing. Or in, um, Braveheart, they say freedom, right? At KC, we say defy limits and adventure further, because that's the greater cause, and we got to put ourselves aside. So, yeah, no, I mean, I think although I wasn't a part of that genre of off-roading, like I'm just super lucky, as I know Randy feels, and all the team, most teams, like everyone feels like that way about KC in their own way. This connection, right, to the cause. So,
I want to get to the. I was specifically interested in the rodeo that was the pandemic, specifically in your brand, and I want to get into that. I've got questions galore, but before that, when you're progressing through the company, you said early 2000s, you're starting to realize the weight that this brand carries, right, and the history, with your family, and your family's friends and your friends. Then the talks start coming about, maybe it's time for us to purchase this. Maybe it's time for us to do that, and all the stuff that goes along with that. I'd like to know, like, why, what your thoughts were, or what you thought, and then also, at what point is it, okay, this is ours. I got some really cool ideas, but now the weight of the brand has hit me, and now the size of the shoes that I've got to fill and take that to the next level. That's got to be a daunting task. And it's easy to be, confident and confident in your ideas and stuff, but there's those times you lay your head down at night, and you're like, it was built and it's great. I don't want to be the one that fucks it up.
yeah. Luckily for us, I think going back to your original question is like, how did all that shit come about? Our core family business is helping American companies like design and outsource contract manufacture things that, sometimes it's due to cost, sometimes it's due to expertise, Um, and so we're like always been in a mindset of like ideas is how do we help them do what they want to do, you know? Sometimes it's a machine part, sometimes it's a sewn product. Uh, so my point is that um, I think our focus has always just been on helping and being not just like being a vendor, but like, leading up into the purchase of KC from '04 to 2014 when Michael sold it to us, we not only contract manufactured different parts, we had taken over all of their IT. We had taken over all of the maintenance of the ERP system. We did a lot of the website, so the ecom, because our thought was like, well, if we help them do better, it can only help us as a vendor sell more parts, right? And so when when Casey got into some tough times, and that was probably like 2012 beginning to 2014, they had some really strong loyalties in the distribution, and there was such a strong following for the product, but LEDs had shifted, the demand had shifted to LEDs. And it's funny, I mean, Rigid Industries created that LED market, and Rigid bought that technology from someone else.
Oh, really?
And so, oh yeah, and Michael had an opportunity to buy that technology, but at that time, there was just a crash in the economy, and so not a lot of people could stomach,
Yeah.
investing, at that time, $3 to $5 million on a unproven technology that was really only using commercial lighting. But the owners of Rigid at that time did, and so they created a new category within lighting, and we had to reinvent ourselves. And so, we fell onto some pretty hard times in that 12 to 14, and not to mention, I mean, there were suspension companies that had their own light bar line. I mean, at SEMA show, you walk down like South Hall.
Yeah.
I mean, in the beginning, it was like, we felt the pain, but after a while, it was just, there was so much of it that it was just normal. I mean, literally everyone and every company, from wheels to suspension to tires, were selling light bars. It was worse than rooftop tents.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember.
So
I remember those days.
Yeah. And I wish I mean, if we went on the internet, we could probably find a lot of photos, but it was crazy in terms of how many companies hopped onto that bandwagon. And I think looking back, it's because lighting is such a aesthetic apparel type of thing too.
Yes.
It's easy enough to add, but it creates a huge impact on the vehicle as a canvas, And so, yeah, we fell in hard times, in short. And we had been a partner to KC as a vendor for, at that point, like 30 years. And it was not really something where we said, oh, like, what can we do to add to this business? It was like, fuck, like, we're bleeding.
Yeah.
Like, what are our options, together with Michael? And he had done a great job. I mean, over the years, we all make mistakes and there's always more we can do. But, we just had product and technology gaps. And the consumer's taste changed so fast. And although, it was like a year to 2 years when I say it, but that was very fast. When you think about, in the muscle engine performance, you've got tooling that exists for like 50 years.
Yeah.
I'm not talking jigs that exist for like 75 years. I mean, some guys are still using their jigs to weld stuff for headers. I mean, that's lasted that long. Like 1 to 3 years is a very fast turn. So, we just put our heads together, and I actually talked to Michael, and I called him because part of our exercise is be grateful, and I told him that I was grateful to him that he showed us the ropes while he was at the helm, and that when the time came for him to make a decision, because he could make a different decision, and we all have egos, and but he made a decision to partner with us even more, and thankfully for us and him, it worked out, right? But it was caused by the shift in the market, to answer your question. And we weren't prepared. I mean, we were prepared as best we could, but it wasn't enough,
Did you guys see it taken over that quickly, or do you think it'd be a fad and then fizzle out? Because that's when you started talking the timeline. That was my instant thought. It was like KC just had the same light for 40 years, and then it seemed like all of a sudden the LED boom just exploded. There was light bars on top of light bars with a light bar on it, and then like 15, 16, 17, like, oh shit, these guys have come back again, and it was just cool to see the whole brand like reinvented.
It's great to see it reinvented, and I was going to go with that. The other thing is, like you said, it's a fashion thing too. Like lights are just you're a technology company, but the consumer, for the most part, is buying it for a fashion statement, right? And when the LED thing happened and it came on so strong, it's not like it's a slow fade to a different technology. It's such a rapid, polar opposite visual, right? From an incandescent, to an LED, and it was like a light switch, and it was instantly like you almost feel like you were dated. Yeah, like if you didn't have LEDs, right, you were less than. I mean, it would be
idiot. You're an idiot.
It was like, I mean, somebody like Sony, holding on to tube TVs when Pioneer comes out the plasma. They're like, nope, we're just gonna stay with the tube. It's that visual of a difference, like instant, and that's a tough one, like on your side. But I will say, from the outsider, like, I know you went through your pains. The cool fucking part is, it's kind of like you didn't chase and you stayed steady. So the people that don't know, the people that just know KC are like, yeah, them fuckers they've kept doing their thing. And now, just because everything that's old is new again and retro's back, the round KC, the fucking KC covers, forget if it even turns on, right? You could have an LED, you could have an incandescent, put those yellow covers on it, and I want to be old school, and that brand, there's something so special and cool, obviously unintentional, but the way that things worked out of people being like, you know what, they don't just like come out with a new product like every weekend to change the new fads. KC's is KC. It's like, I look at it as, honestly, I don't use this term lightly, but we talk about brands in this industry. You guys are the Coca-Cola of the lighting world, right? Because you got all kinds of other drinks that you can try, right? You've got all kinds of the newest Bang energy, this wasp flavored whatever that's going to do, and this guy's going to do this, and this guy's going to do this, and people are going to gravitate to the new thing. Coca-Cola is Coca-Cola. Now, they screwed up with the new flavor there back in the 2000s, whatever. They changed that, but Coca-Cola is the thing. And if you're going to build a badass truck, you're going to build an Overlander, you're going to build, especially a vintage inspired truck or whatever, you're going to make excuses if you have anything besides KC. And that's the same way we talk about Coca-Cola. When we'd say it all the time. If you go in and order a Coke, right, and they're like, ooh, I'm sorry, we only have Pepsi. They're apologizing that they don't have the thing that you asked for because they know it's not as good. We try to do the same thing on the chassis side of the world. We try to be like, if it's not a Roadster Shop chassis, you're probably going to make excuses of why it's not. KC's be the same thing. And it's really cool to hear the story because on the outside looking in, that's literally what it is. You forget about the ridges and the stuff that comes and go. And yeah, there's color changing bars and stuff that, DRL and makes the thing and all that kind of stuff. I wasn't bullshitting you earlier. He's got a Bronco Raptor, I've got a Raptor truck. And I'm not going with the newest fangle flair of doing the kind of stuff. I want the round KC light bar on the top. And just back to I'm sorry, I know I'm rambling, whatever, and I'm fanboying out, but I'm telling you the truth. When you mentioned Back to the Future earlier at the very beginning, and that movie comes on here. We do a segment on favorite car movies. We've done, I don't know, we've done like almost 200 episodes. The Back to the Future comes on a lot, and the same thing that I talk about is you say, oh yeah, that black Toyota with the KCs on it. That's how you describe the vehicle in the movie.
Your lights smoke the DeLorean, I think.
Yeah, because you're not talking about the DeLorean, but literally and I know that it's easy because you're living it, and I know it seems like we're just throwing praise on you, but I honestly want you to understand that when you're describing the hero vehicle in a movie, and you don't just say the black Toyota. Nobody says just the black Toyota. It's the black Toyota with the KCs on it, because that's the impact. When it thing rolled around, I thought it was the baddest son of a bitch there ever was in a movie. It made a statement. And I'm wanting to relive that by putting KC bars on my Raptor. I mean, honestly.
I was on Bring a Trailer over the weekend. I sent my brother a text like, hey, you think I should buy this, throw some KCs on it? It's a 1987 Toyota. So I'm like, is it going to be cool or is it going to suck to drive? And I just want to look at it for a little bit.
Forget the wheels and tires. Forget the lift. It was, I want to buy this and put some KCs on it. Like, that's got to be fucking crazy, honestly, for you guys to think about that as a vehicle fashion statement, branding the way it is.
It is, and Randy mentioned that, right? And that we live through that every event we go through or go to, you know? And it's because you have people coming up sharing stories. And that goes back to what you guys said about your podcast and why you probably have such a strong such a strong purpose. As humans, like, we need story. Like, if you think about it, the United States is a story.
Yeah.
The Constitution is a story. I mean, all this stuff started as a myth, as a story, right? Over time, as people like practice these, or when they subscribe to the stories, they start practicing. Some of these things get accepted as like values that are socially, or, you know, we all accept, you know what I mean? But they're all made up. I mean, what the hell is an LLC?
Yeah.
I mean, one day someone just said, you know, we need to organize these things this way. And here's the reason. And it was an idea. It was a myth, but it made sense and people accepted it. And then they started buying into it. Then it becomes real, right? My point is that we are so, I mean, there's so much stuff happening in the world. I mean, good, bad, I mean, however you want to look at it, right? The fact is, we are still very lucky that our DNA here in the United States is like, we have opportunity. We have opportunity to start today to do anything we want. You know what I mean? We can create a myth that people believe. And over time, it becomes a story that's told. And then over longer periods of time, it becomes accepted like a brand. But you guys get to talk to the people who are doing that. And the inter stories that between people and the connections, humans need that, you know? That's the center where inspiration lives, where struggle, right, lives, you know, where perseverance and achievement, all of that live, you know? We need that.
You can't get that. You can't get that just by watching an influencer on TikTok. You can't get that story.
I mean, you can, but that's one story, one time, right?
Yeah, I know.
It's only real after, I don't know how many decades, right?
Yeah.
But no, we do feel the magnitude of that. And I would even say, like, you know, in our Slack channels, the customer service team shares stories. I mean, all the time, right? Of people and the stories they tell. And that's one of our mantras is like, you know, when we design a product and when we provide a service or an experience, like, we are creating that unforgettable experience for someone else, that allows them to adventure further. Right. And like, we really do live through your stories. Like, we live through your story, like here on this podcast, right? We live through other people's stories. And that's exactly what you're describing, is that magnitude of how much that story has become a part of people's lives, you know, in this Americana car culture. And we have every intent to preserve and protect and grow, and live through those people's lives, you know? And so, like, to your point about, you know, either a vintage vehicle or a new vehicle, we want people to customize their lights. You know, we want them to like both style, function. Sometimes people buy lights and they want to be able to protect their investment. I mean, we take all those things into mind. We want our lights to be flexible and change and can be taken off vehicles and put on new vehicles. But we're just tickled to death when people customize their covers, you know, make it their own, because we live in their stories. It's not about us, you know. So
it's wild to think about being able to look at at old light covers designs or whatever, and having the opportunity to do throwbacks or bring back out of the archives and be like, guess what? This month only. Remember these back in the day? And then some of the stuff that has been a rolling skew for so long, you know, talking a little bit about what we talked about and knowing what you know now and where you've gone through with KC and the whole brand. Do you lean into that methodology with the branding as far as you said, preserve and protect, right? So that's important. Had KC made the decision to buy the LED technology, they could have gone the way of a lot of different stuff. And it's probably still been around and still been very successful, but I think from the outside looking in, it would have a different brand look and feel than it does right now. Because the people that don't know all the story, right, they think that it was a conscious decision by KC to say, we're
not giving up the farm.
We're not giving up the farm. We're not going with all the new fads, whatever. We're going to do our thing and then slowly progress to the better and new thing, blah, blah. And that's kind of what it's appeared at. Now, knowing that, what kind of weight of making sure you're not chasing the next new thing that might not be in line with the brand's history?
Well, first of all, we made a huge mistake by chasing whether if it's rigid or all the light bars. I think shortly after we passed on the deal, we knew what was coming. And so we started designing light bars, but we had a lot of issues, mechanically. It was a new form factor that we had never dealt with, although some mechanical designs share similar things like sealing, an opening, but shortly after that, we realized that we just need to figure out our own thing, and so we went back to the traditional halogen bulbs. You've got a bulb in the center of this big bowl, right? And so we really went back to that. But I think the other big part of what made that new design successful wasn't just that; it was the industrial design that we had taken a risk on. I'm pretty sure 9 out of 10 engineers. I think I've asked maybe 8 engineers, so I'm just scaling up a few, but would have said you shouldn't design it this way. It makes no sense, right? But we had favored industrial and aesthetic design over practical engineering design in those specific days when the market had shifted. And for us, that was what we call our gravity LED line. And so it's part of it is we point the LEDs actually back into the bowl, just like, a halogen bulb is, whereas most of the light bars and other LED lights, you've got a LED has a small cone and it's everything shooting forward, right? And so we just paved our own path and just said, look, let's design something that we would be proud, to install, look at, and it would make us feel something when we put it on a vehicle. And that was really one of the turning points, for us, inflection points in this kind of crazy, market situation where you have, really good American entrepreneurs starting, LED light bar companies, but you also had this stampede of Chinese LED product coming from overseas being sold under XYZ brand, while there were people importing being sold under their brand. Wheels, tires, suspension companies, hat companies, milk companies, whatever. And so, that really, really, really helped us, was doing something very, very different.
From the consumer side, it was insanely overwhelming. Like, you're looking at this light bar is $1,500. This one's $47. Visually, you can't tell the difference. You don't know which one's which. Is that a good one? Am I getting drastically ripped off? Should I buy the $47 one?
Especially in that space, too, because you couldn't – usually it's a couple of brands, and you can obviously see, the hype. All those reviews are bought and paid for, all that stuff. But then that scene in that time, you could not tell facts from fiction. You couldn't talk to anybody that had them or, had it. It was nuts, crazy time.
It was crazy. And, we all buy things and we're put into those similar situations. And it depends on what it is, like a water bottle versus a battery. I mean, you can get Amazon branded batteries, right? I mean, they work fine, but some people have some unique needs, and some of that is the canvas, right? The look on the vehicle, some of it's performance decision-making, but I'm sure we all buy things that are dispensable and they're not top brand, but we don't have a need for something. So, going back to your question, I mean, ultimately, we needed to do it our way. And we're very lucky. I mean, some of it's hard work, but some of it's fate, when we have this legacy halogen technology and to go from that to another idea, I mean, it just sometimes it's fate, and we we hit it on the nail with that, and then some of the industrial design, and then we were able to generate some momentum, and claw our way back through the sea of 3 for $47. But it was a good time too. I think for many people, whether if it's a startup or like century old companies, every struggle, all those things mostly become fond memories, really fond, amazing like memories that you take with you, and continue on. So I'm super grateful for those times. Actually, there was a who posted it, Randy? Someone posted a photo of Randy, and it's like he was sitting in a chair. And he was like doing this, and it's funny because back then, Randy, when we hired Randy for the position, it was a very strategic position, but it was also a very tactical, demanding position. We all wear a lot of hats, and Randy was put in some pretty stressful situations. When you think about like back then, we've grown a lot. Like I've grown a lot. My brother's grown a lot. My dad. I mean, we're partners. We're family. Andy is my direct report. I mean, it's a recipe for like traumatic disaster. And Randy was at the center of all that volatility and energy. So it's really interesting to think back. And that actually gives me a lot of hope, on mornings when I wake up and I have, whatever set of, new challenges. I really think back to those times, and I think back to the employees like Randy who like, really work through it with us. And I'm like, you have the balls and you have the energy for this today. So you need to shut up and you need to man up, it's just like,
I love the culture.
It's like, stop, just because the brain goes to the negative cycle of, oh, I got it. It's like, no, you reprogram that shit, and you're like you're lucky you get to deal with this today. So it's all about rewriting the self-talk. But yeah, no, it's been amazing, and we always come back to trying to have a very, very strong sense of purpose. Like I shared about Randy, purpose is very important in life. So
Alan, speaking of Bobby, who actually posted that picture of me during our tough times. Hey, growing pains, boys.
Yeah.
Growing pains. But what a lot of people don't see. But like, we get through it all. But like, going back to like what you were saying, Alan, in regards to like that design aspect of the gravity, and like you're kind of, when you went back to the lab, if you will, with Bobby, who is our director of engineering. I mean, I've heard stories, but Alan, feel free to chime in on this. Like, you saw all those light bars where it was like, $2,000-$3,000, like, maybe 10-20% difference here and there, but it looks like a freaking light bar. Everybody has a freaking light bar, right? But like the Pro 6, the Gravity Pro 6, the Gravity Titan, the circular kind of design cues that came from our legacy, right? If you look at any kind of Baja races with those circular lights, and I'm going to be honest, I was a fanboy before I came on, and like I realized all that, you know what I mean? And then when Alan and Bobby took those design cues and literally took that and brought it to like the next level of, this is what a light bar should be. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't, right? So, but we are that KC, essentially who Pete Brown created, but it's a different chapter in this generation. You know what I mean? So like, Alan, if you can, what was that mindset of yours like when you went in with Bobby in the lab and trying to, put that design together?
I learned from a lot of people that humans all have this thing called a big tabletop issue. It means like, this issue is very, very universal. And it's this idea that everyone, in some way or form, very differently, they need to be good enough. Sometimes it's for your dad, sometimes it's for your mom, maybe it's for your brother, could be even for Randy. My thing growing up was trying to be different, which I'm sure a lot of people, and it's very colorful, like what that means for each person.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, Randy, I think when Bobby and I sat down, we were like, I don't care if they're hillbillies. I don't care what fucking race they are. We're gonna create the coolest fucking looking light where when they look at this shit, it's like, fuck, this shit looks fucking pretty cool, you know? And so round was always obviously a go-to for us, and we wanted to do round, and there was a sea of rectangle and squares. But you know, when you look at the fins, when you look at even the rings that attach to each other, when you look at the centerpiece holder, even on the Titan now as a triangle, I mean, for Christ's sake, we put Superman's logo on our fucking light, dude.
Yeah.
It was always about being over the top in this tasteful, sophisticated, but mic drop way, you know? And keep in mind, like our heroes during that time in 2014, maybe even like 2005 to 2014, was Steve Jobs. I mean, Bobby and I dreamed about like wearing a black turtleneck, and
nobody dreams about wearing a black turtleneck.
A black turtleneck and marching up to, you know, SEMA, whatever, you know, banquet they have, and like, you know, like doing what Steve Jobs did, which you were excited. I'll be in a yellow one.
Yeah.
But you know what, like, and you know, I no disrespect to Apple, but I used to be very excited about their product announcements, you know? Like you always like just tuned in and were like, wow. That is, and that's really what it comes down to, right? Is the desire to be good enough, to be recognized, to be different. And we had an opportunity to do that through KC, you know, and through the product. So we always thought about that. Round was always like the center point of that's got to be the shape, you know, for the most part. But what can we do to be super different from technology, industrial design, aesthetics, and even just features, you know? So take risks, right? And sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. So
I'm going to ask you a completely random question off of this, but this has nothing to do. Forget any of the businesses that we have anything to do with. You mentioned everybody's got this tabletop issue to be good enough, right? And I firmly believe in that. And I think it's important to figure out why or what that is driving everybody you deal with, from a customer, from an employer, from an employee, and stuff like that, because learning that stuff makes all those engagements that much better. Do you think that human beings, we all have that need to be better? Do you think we gravitate to be different because we think the program in our head is we're going to be better? It's going to be easier to be better if we're different, because then you can't exactly weigh us against somebody else that's done the exact same thing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's one explanation. I mean, I think the challenge is, like, remember, all of our parents were different. They did the best they could, right? But they also had parents who had different good enough programming, and their parents' parents did. And so there are these layers, right? Layers of layers. And I think the classic example is like, you know, you have this one person who stockpiles money, right? They're afraid to invest it. And it's because their parents, you know, they grew up in maybe the war, you know, when like you couldn't do that, right? And cash was king. I mean, that was a programming that their parents received, which they passed down to this person who has an anxiety about investing money and growing money. It's neither right or wrong. It's just a belief, you know? So yes, what you described for sure is one reason. And there's so many, right? There's so many. Right. Mine, I think, was I had a huge insecurity about fitting in. You know, like I grew up in a suburb here in South Bay, and I had a great life. I mean, don't get me wrong, but in my own fishbowl, it was like daunting. You know, I'm the eldest of three, and my brothers and I are 7 years apart. I didn't have an older brother, for better or worse, so confidence wasn't high. And, you know, with a little bit of bullying, it's like you question your worth, and you question like how to just survive the day, maybe without being, you know, just feeling a secure sense of security with a group, you know? And so that's a version of that, right? Mandy has his own version. So I do think that when you figure that out, to your point, it's not that like you ever necessarily like get over it, but once you know how to name it,
manage it,
you know how to wield it, you can manage it better, you know, and so it takes time. And, but that's a lot of like, honestly, about managing a business. It's about managing your psychology, you know, yours first. And then you help others around you do that, you know? And when you do that, it literally works like Star Wars.
Yeah.
You will open the door. It's literally Jedi mind
Yeah.
trick hacks. And that's about understanding yourself and understanding truly what the other perspective is, right? And then figuring out where are their similarities, where are their differences, and then, being able to at least have some sort of alignment and not agreement, because that's a path forward. And it's not a door you have to close. And this, we're talking anywhere from like pay negotiation and salary negotiation to, how do we move forward on this marketing strategy? Like all those things, right? Like people just have different things that tick them off and make them tick. And to your point, like it's all about understanding those. And when we do that, some really, really cool things can happen. Like coming back from a fucked up 2014, for us. So
you got to be careful with that, with wielding that power too because it's almost like a new trick, when you start to learn it and especially when you've managed yourself, right? And you're starting to figure out, like, I know why I'm going to do the stupid thing before I'm about to do it. So I can keep myself from doing that stupid thing because my attitude is going to make me do that. So once you start controlling yourself and you start learning more about yourself, and a lot of that comes with age too, as you start maturing, you start being a lot more, introspective. And once you start doing that, then like you said, you can start you listen instead of hear, right? Once you start listening instead of hearing, right? It's a completely different thing. Then you talk to that guy. Well, if you're talking to the employee or, a customer or something like that, and you're so jazzed because you're like, oh dude, now listen, I figured myself out, and just by listening to you, I figured you out. So let me tell you all the things about you, the reason why you are the way you are, and together and you can come off like a complete fucking weirdo. And nobody really if they're not ready to hear that kind of stuff, you have to present it in the correct way. You're like, let me tell you something. The reason you're doing this is because you're flawed in this way, right? And you think that you have to do this. There's totally, yeah. I've seen people do it completely the opposite fucking way. I've done it myself the wrong way. I'm like, oh, shit, I just figured you out. I can put the puzzle piece together. Some people don't need to be fixed, right? You work with them.
Yeah. I mean, that's totally right. I mean, and I'm learning that lesson in my relationship with, my spouse, my kids. Like, you cannot change people.
Right.
You just can't. I mean, and sometimes the relationship has that level of quality where someone might look up to you, just like that mutual respect and the mutual, the ability to like not take things personal because you trust that person or you respect that person. It's mutual, right? They'll listen and you'll mutually listen. But most of the time, we ask for permission to really like, hey, like, do you want some suggestion? Because if they're not ready to listen to your point,
right,
it's not gonna, and so with kids, my point is that everyone needs to write their own rules. When they write the rule, it's a great rule, right? When we write the rule, not so much. Yeah. I mean, I know you guys know this, whether it's your friends or spouses, kids, coworkers, it's like, the classic joke is like, didn't I just say that? Yeah. But humans need to write their own rules, and that takes time. It cannot be forced,
right.
but it can be inspired, and I think that's leadership.
It's funny,
but it's hard.
The kids, I've got my son's a senior in high school, and my daughter, she's a junior in college, and she's been great, awesome kid. My son, he takes after me in just about every single way, and you deal with something, and that, like, we got a great relationship, but it's funny when the stuff happens. You're like, oh, dude, you're fucked up and stupid just like I was. Like, I know, and you're doing the same exact thing. And you're like, I'm not coming down on him, and I'm trying to tell him, like, I understand it. You just did something real dumb, and this is what you're thinking. But in 2 weeks, you're fixing to do something even dumber because this is what he's going through. And he's looking at you like, I'm not like you. I'm like, I promise you're exactly like me. Well, because I did the exact same shit. And he's like, oh, you don't have any idea what's about to happen? Yeah, all right, whatever. And 2 weeks later,
that, then played it back 2 weeks.
2 weeks later, I'm saying, like, didn't I just tell you this? Well, there's no way you knew that. Because I told you it was going to happen, right?
Crystal ball.
Because we're identical. I know what you're chasing and the reason you're chasing it and all that kind of stuff.
If we ran our families more like sports teams, professional sports teams, if they, like, because what you just said was if you review the tape.
Yeah.
If you review the tape and they reviewed the tape, and watch their actions, they could learn a lot from that,
Right.
But that's human. I mean, and that's the hard part, right? About being a dad or a mentor or a coach or a leader or a manager is like, it's like knowing when, like, you cannot change this person, but your job is to reflect back provide suggestions and let that human learn on their own. And look, in a business, there's also like, accountability and, certain lines and certain KPIs. I mean, there are boundaries, right, that you put up where you have to make decisions. But my point is humans learn through their own learning. And that's a very challenging part to manage, from a psychological perspective. But so what year Raptor do you have and Bronco?
I got a 22 and you got a 23. Bronco Raptor?
22 or 23 Bronco.
Yeah, something.
And no recall letters, nothing, everything good.
I usually just throw those out when they come in.
I got a recall on mine that's something about trailer brakes, but I don't pull a trailer.
Yeah.
So we just got one. Taylor sent one in a Slack channel for the 24 Tacoma, and I feel for these I feel for the OEMs, man. I mean, there's so many variables. I hear a lot of people, which I understand. Like how quality has gone down, whatever. But man, it just sucks, It just can't catch a break. I mean, I've seen I literally shit you not, in the last like 4 weeks, Tundra, Bronco, Tacoma.
GM, a big class action lawsuit about the 8L90 trans, and
Ford's they're recalling. Ford's recalling 90,000 because of the 3.0 V6. There's a bad valve in that. 90,000 of them. They're under replaced motors. That's 90,000 replaced motors. That's not a bracket or a reprogram or something like that. It's 90,000 motors.
I mean, did it always used to be like this, or is it just that we have Instagram and we've got the web and there's more blog posts? I mean, have things really changed, or is information just faster and more transparent now? But it's just baffling, because it's kind of similar to when I grew up. My parents were rock, right? They were the rocks. And I don't remember when it was, but at the first time you realize that they're actually human, and you're actually not as safe or whatever because they're human. It's I just view all OEMs and, professional companies like Apple or Sam, whatever, and then these things happen. You're they're just like us. I mean, they make mistakes too, and things happen, but it's crazy what they have to go through, right? This is at a scale that is huge. I mean, it's billions of dollars. I mean, I think Tesla recalled a couple months ago. There was a huge recall. It's just very interesting, and thinking about has it always been like this, or is it just information is faster?
I think it's information and
probably weren't hearing about
technology. But at the same time, you think about it like an 86 custom cruiser station wagon, right? It was all mechanical. You had power windows, right? But it was a 305 or a 350 with a 4-barrel.
Well, you expected shit to break back then.
And if it messed up, you took it to the dealer. The dealer just fixed it, and most of the time they didn't tell you exactly the truth about what it was. It was just thing,
$200 oil change.
Yeah, whatever it is. But like you said, the technology that's in the vehicles, our expectations as the consumer base has changed for what that vehicle should do, and the workforce and quality. I think all of it goes together, and especially the community, the being able to everybody TikTok about it. I mean. You think about it in the 80s, I look back at the 80s. Mid-80s was when the cars were the last before they became modern, really, right? So you think about the late 80s were basically the same as a muscle car. They just had
more plastic shit.
A couple more plastic interiors and shit like that on some stuff on the outside. But if it didn't crank great, right? You were just it's a little cold-natured, right? I need to put some plugs in it, or I need to do this. You
could only tell 20 people that you knew, and that was it.
And you didn't instantly, get on Facebook and say, oh, my God, it's not, it's ruined. I got to take it back to the dealer and holler around and stuff like that. Now it's, you can tweet, Jim Farley from Ford and be like, this is a piece of shit, and just keep on tweeting him. He'll see it.
I mean, some vehicles the Jeep 4xe, I mean, there's definitely a lot more electronics, but some of these recalls are for machined
tolerance
parts and issue, right? And it's just it's interesting. But your vehicles are good. Point is, your vehicles are good.
We're good.
No issues.
Yeah,
we're good.
Knock on wood, tomorrow shit's
yeah, exactly.
falling apart.
Well, you won't know anyway because you throw it away. So I like your style.
They're kind of like the
Just,
SEMA emails, like, "Ooh, Rhode Island has a new license plate."
Yeah.
Oh, your windshield wiper may fail at 220 miles an hour. Garbage, both of them.
Yeah. Randy, I wanted to hear from you on the marketing side of things. We talked about, the brand weight, right, and the behemoth that it is, and the respect that it has in the community. You coming in, you're super excited. We've all talked about how you overdressed, for your interview. So you're ready to rock and roll. But there's something in the marketing space that goes on inside your head, much like what we talked about in Alan's head too. Of this is a Coca-Cola, right? So there's KPIs, there's numbers, there's growth, there's movement, there's some stuff to do, but there's also the weight of like, I can't fuck this up either, right? I got some cool ideas, but regardless if they may or may not work, you might overanalyze that potential for the success of that idea because of the weight of there. If it's a startup, you're like, what's the worst that could happen? There's nothing to judge us against, right? Just like we talked about human beings wanting to be different because there's nothing to judge us against. Well, with a brand that has that many years behind it and has that much weight in the industry, there's previous campaigns, previous logos, previous designs, previous stuff to weigh against what your ideas are.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't realize that until now. I apologize. You're going to be done tomorrow.
No, I mean, it's funny you say that. I mean, as a consumer of the brand, before I even was part of the team, I was like, yeah, in awe. And like when I found out that it was just a family-owned business, I was like, oh, wow, okay. So this, guy, Pete Brown, created this massive behemoth brand in the automotive space. And I got to see all the cool stuff as soon as I got on board. And I was like, wow, okay, let me take a look at the vintage footage and everything in the vault to understand like what needs to really happen within the next 5-6 years that I've been here. But like I think ultimately Alan and Andy, I mean, speaking of like a startup, right? Like my perspective was that Alan and Andy literally took the brand that was there for 40 plus years at that time and did a restart up and changed everything because Alan and Andy knew how to create small businesses like from what their dad had and made it bigger in a digital space. So the stuff that you see now, not only is it just them leading us, it's basically us, like myself, Taylor, and a handful of other employees that are actually like enthusiasts, automotive enthusiasts. We wrench on our vehicles, we freaking go off-roading, we go hiking, hunting, whatever. We're living the life, right? So they were strategic in regards to like recruitment in general. And like, I mean, a good example of this is Yeti, right? The brand Yeti. Yeti marketing team is all internal and they're enthusiasts internally. So that helped us. And we didn't even know Yeti was doing that. So I think Alan and Andy, the way they were doing it was like a strategic, like, let's bring in people that actually is living this lifestyle and let's talk shop and let's see how we could actually grow this brand. So like take the stuff that we understood from Pete Brown and Michael DeHaas and let's just continue. And they let us, whether they let us fail forward or not, depending on like the short videos or reels that we did or like the first marketing campaign. Hey, they let us do it whether we fell forward or not.
He just got done saying you got to write your own rules. Exactly. He knows exactly
like,
what he's doing.
I still remember the first year. They're like, all right, so we got to do this. They gave me a task. They're like, you have to create this April Fool's post I think the first year that I was here. They're like, Randy, you're gonna handle that. I was like, okay. So most people don't know that. So in Gardena, we actually have our LA office. Basically, ownership and management team is there, and some of finance and engineering. So SpaceX is right next to us, right? So I took one of our gravity lights, put it on some fishing string and a pole, and called it gravity lights, and it was like floating like this on an A-pillar of a Jeep. and I was like, what the fuck was that? I was like, that's the April Fool's joke, bro.
Well, two things that come to mind. One, I think to answer your guys' question, I mean, Randy came in day one very enthusiastic,
Dude, he's
I mean, he had been he he had been working in I think it was like commercial refrigeration.
Right. Exactly.
But cars and off-road was his life, and I think his personality and his is just like old school things, like historical automotive things was his thing. And so he came in very, very passionate. And I think my point is that we have always traditionally hired not for the exact skills that are needed, but we've always hired for the person. And that comes from my dad. And Pete did that too. And Michael to some degree. But my dad was always hiring for the person. And we made a lot of mistakes. I mean, because the person you thought that you hired is not the person that you got. But more times than not, I think you win when you hire the person,
Agree.
Nowadays we try to do both equally, because we're at the point also that I feel like our goal is not to hire more. Our goal is to hire when we don't want that person to sit around and like just die. Like mundane stuff. And I heard a podcast, and I do agree with this, in that all of the quantity of work that used to have to get done, and that could be mundane tasks like entering data, whatever. AI has already taken over that. But that actually leaves humans to do really good quality work. And that's where the shift is, right? Is that we get to do quality work. And so we want people to do quality work. And so, someone who has passion, and a good person, like they're going to bring quality work and quality decisions. Some of it needs to be like guided by us and supported by us and all that. But like we really need to hire people who are passionate about what they do, because that goes back to purpose. Without purpose, there's no discretionary energy. You know what I mean? Like your energy will get to a point and you can't go anymore. But if you got a purpose, like what you guys do, right, in media, like you've got a purpose, like you will burn that midnight oil beyond what is needed. And sometimes it's not just effort. It's like making sacrifices, changing your ways, right? Like our 10 fundamentals, like any one of them takes a ton of discretionary energy, because they're all emotional IQ things. They're not necessarily tangible things, right? Be happy, not right. And I fail at that 9 out of 10 times with the kids, right? So, more times than not, like we have to hire that person. That we're hiring the person, not the skill set. But we really do try to like make sure the person has the right personality or purpose driven, to be better in those areas of the skill sets and responsibilities. But my point is, Randy came in super passionate, and that's always really, really good to see, and good to have. And from there, my dad's philosophy was always, as long as you tried your hardest, nothing else matters. There's been pros and cons to that over the course of my life, but for the most part, it's been really good, because it breeds people not to fear failing. And for some people, that means even trying something. There are a lot of people that are very afraid to try stuff because, and I'm going to stereotype, I don't mean to do it intentionally, but, the parents who are like just engineers, OCD, everything has to be a certain way and nothing's good enough, because they love their kids so much and they want them to excel and they want them to have A pluses or whatever the equivalent of that. But you have kids who are like, what they're taught is that nothing's good enough, and they're scared of everything. They're scared of trying. They're scared of, anything short of that. So they just become scared of everything. And we've seen some of those people come through KC, and, all we can do is reflect, and it's up to them, to make, like we talked about, be aware of certain tabletop issues and be ready to make changes. But if they're ready to make changes, we've got a program for them to help them, cross over. So
if you could have an engineer marry like a liberal arts degree holder that's like impressionist painting, if you could have a mom that does impressionist painting and a dad that's an engineer,
next generations,
you could have a decent little kid there.
Might have a chance. You might have a chance there.
Hearing all your philosophies on business and creativity in life, how much of a awakening was it for you kind of jumping in, being able to run your own company opposed to being the manufacturing support for everybody else and having to deal with everybody else's visions versus now it's going to come off probably not the best way, but it's almost like the Catholic schoolgirl who is now out in college and not in Catholic school anymore.
No rules.
It's a really good question. For a long time, I used to go to SEMA and I would have a ton of anxiety. When I used to go to SEMA, it was to meet with all of our customers who relied on us to help design product and make it, And the anxiety came from, like, for KC, looking at other lighting companies and what they're doing, right? And feeling not good enough, or not have done a great enough job. And a lot of it wasn't on me, it's a team effort, but
yeah.
Or an engine performance, if I saw another Chinese factory come into the mix who are, like the factory's owner's son now, who's American now, is selling and knocking off our American, branded customers' product. You only have so much control, right? And so I think the difference now is, like, good and bad. We have full control over the destiny. We used to rent and we still do, that's called renting your revenue, because you're relying on other people as a consulting company. And there's a lot of companies like that, who, from accountants to lawyers to agencies, right? Marketing agencies. I mean, they own a brand, but they don't own a brand, because at the end of the day, they serve their customers. And if their customers don't do well, they don't do well, So unless you create a product, to your point, or a service that you're offering, or a value added service, you have less control. That was very tough. Like, for me, I'm more of a type A personality. Like, I want to win, and I don't like to feel like I don't have a T crossed or I dotted. And it was really hard for, those years, like 10, 12 years, supporting the family business as, a partner to many companies. And so KC gave us a huge opportunity to own the revenue and not just rent the revenue. So that was really nice to do and to have, but it's not less stressful or more stressful. It's different, but at least you have more control, over your destiny, or not.
And more fulfillment in what you're doing, and take more pride and see the outcome of what your thoughts and ideas are.
Yeah, to some degree. I mean, I think, all consulting companies can feel that pride, in their work, any case, any campaign. I mean, that is there. There is something to be said specifically about KC. When a customer comes up, they could be 10 years old or 80 years old, and they share a story with us about a core memory. That kind of fulfillment is much grander, it hits home much, much bigger for sure than a website I launched, in my heyday, or a server rack that I built, or, I mean, it's amazing, to be able to do that. And I think for a lot of people at KC and that work for brands, including your brand, to see people, engage and subscribe to your podcast and your content, as we see people, engaged with, buying our apparel, or, passing, a vehicle with Casey's on it. There's something to be said about brand recognition, and that someone bought your product and is using it, and you see it, out there. That kind of reach and that kind of, like, impact, is it's a huge driver of purpose, for us, for sure.
That's awesome.
We're going to get into some standard questions, but you mentioned apparel.
Yeah, I was going to get that too.
I know we've already talked about it. This is going to, we're fanboying out, right? We're fanboying out, but everything I've ever seen with a KC logo on it, apparel wise, ad wise, whatever, if that little circle in the KC's on it, it's always on something great. Not pretty cool. Not like, okay, they threw a logo on it. Oh, it's a black shirt with a logo on it. It's thoughtful, and it's right. It's everything. I mean, the shirts you're wearing, the hats you're wearing, the stuff you see, some of the stuff is very simple, but it's right because somebody put thought into it. You mentioned Yeti earlier. There's a lot of stuff the way Yeti is done. Maybe not so much now, but definitely in the past, the way they've done a lot of marketing and stuff. And you see the things. There's perfection and beauty in simplicity sometimes, and things craftfully and artfully done in the right fucking way. It's just, you've got to look, right? People can do apparel. People can throw a logo on a t-shirt, right? That's merch, not apparel. Apparel is a different thing, and you guys fucking nail it. Everything that you do nails it. Now, with all that being said, I'm fixing to give the stand-up comedian a joke. Like, here's one you should do, right? I'm going to give you an idea. I want to know why there's not been a fucking collab with Pit Viper on some covers. You got the old school sunglasses. You're telling me that a Pit Viper set a collab for a set of light covers wouldn't be a hit? Hey, it's free. It's free of charge.
No, we'll get you a few points on that. I think there was an email with Pit Viper. I saw an email last year with Pit Viper.
Tell me that would be a fucking great cover.
Them or Heatwave.
Heatwave.
Cooler marketing.
Let me chime in on that one. So I have met the former guy that worked at Pit Viper. I don't know who's running it now, the marketing guy. So I have met him on a couple of events, and it was potentially going to happen, but it just never kind of comes to fruition.
Well, like you said, fuck Pit Viper, Heatwave. Justin's coming on the podcast. I mean, Heatwave happen.
100%. We've already did a collab with Heatwave.
Okay.
There's another one potentially coming, but it's sort of in the works. Justin can allude to that later, but yeah, we're pretty tight.
I mean, yeah, with Heatwave, short of like issuing the PO for the latest design, we have 2 versions of some covers coming out, with Heatwave, and we do try to do that,
Hey,
I think one of our goals in the Flagstaff, location, we have a small retail space, and the goal is to highlight and stock some of our brand partnerships. So rugged radios, like grab and go type stuff, including like, Heatwave sunglasses or Pit Viper stuff, or so that would be something we're already working on. But it wasn't until about 4 months ago that we brought on someone, Mark, who is designing every season, a full basket of lifestyle products. And really for us, lifestyle means like it should have less KC logo, but it should be about the item blending in, like the clothing and hats you wear. Like, you want to represent your brand because you're wearing it and you know what you feel when you're wearing it. But it should be a design that when you walk through life, it's not this like blazing, logo. That's where, that's where I think it's good. I mean, Nike is probably one of the few companies that, they can have, the swoosh pretty big, and like you sport it with pride, but a mark like ours, I think subtle is better. But we love to have those things. And I think one of the biggest pillars is that we like it and that we wear it,
That's all,
and we've made plenty of mistakes. Yeah, we've made plenty of mistakes, but that's apparel. It's like, it's so subjective and everyone's different, like Randy would never wear the thong that I wear, but I love mine,
Right.
So
yeah, absolutely. Hey, dude, once you go thong, you don't ever go back. I'm telling you.
Nope. You get used to it. It's like contacts.
I
got used to a thong before I could get used to contacts.
I changed up a little bit here.
Okay.
I was going to say on the apparel side, I have this is not going to be a good transition here. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and I was slipping through looking for light bars for the Bronco. And in the bottom corner, there was a girl wearing one of the new T-shirts. And she's like, oh, that's cute. Click on that. Blows it up. My wife walks by. She's like, oh, I like that. My daughter started throwing out some other new trendy hip words. She's like, oh, I want to get that shirt. We got to get that.
She said slaps. She wants some of that drip.
It's slaps. It's drip. It's Rizzler or something else like that. But otherwise, no interest in Roadster Shop apparel. No interest in car apparel. But it hit home with a super trendy 13-year-old. So I don't know if that's a praise or not.
Wow.
Just throw that out there.
That's big. Yeah. That's big.
That's cool. Yeah, let Randy know what you need. We'll get it to you. But it's funny because
I wasn't trying for free merch. Just throwing that as a compliment.
In the automotive space, we tend to just make men's T-shirts, and women just wear them. And so my point is like, it takes very little to get them excited because there's nothing, like
Right.
women's cut, anything. So we've put a pretty big. I actually think like all of the new items from earlier this year, like 70% of them were women's cuts, just because we're trying to make up for not having it for 56 years, but no, that's a huge area of opportunity for us. There are a lot of women off-roaders, and also women in the tactical space. I mean, women have come up, and I mean they're exploring, a number of interests and hobbies, and then there's a lot of women who might not, be actively off-roading, but sure as hell they're super supportive of their spouses and their boyfriends and brothers and stuff. And so it's a huge opportunity for us to provide some really good stuff for them, and so along that note, I think we've been a automotive lighting company for 56 years, and we're also branching out into, you can buy KC products that when you don't own $50,000, $60,000 vehicle, and it's been a long time coming. But to your point earlier, we've just taken our time on like how do we bring something to market that's unique, that speaks to us, that we would use in a sea of headlamps, flashlights, sight lights, so we're excited about that too. But no, I appreciate that. Thank you for that.
Do you guys do a KC flashlight yet?
We've always had one. It's a smaller one. It's not like a small pencil or a pen one, but we've always had one that we use that it's good quality. It's adjustable focus. So you can go from like spot to flood very easily. Good construction as more of a marketing product. It's not something that would have a product like life cycle. Like that's one that we carry. We've carried it for like 10 years, nothing's changed about it except the LED's been upgraded over the years. But the new stuff we have is like, it's a commitment where this is going to be a lifelong product line, right? And so we need an engineering stack supporting it. We need to design the next features like we do on the automotive lighting side. It's a commitment. And that's something that's new to us too, even on the lifestyle side, is like looking at the business, you start getting into these things and you don't really realize that, oh, we actually have to be invested. Like, it's not just a one-time thing. It needs like air, food, thought, just like our core product line. And that's something I've realized more about, being, if we're going to be successful and we're going to play to win, like we're going to need to invest like we do in automotive lighting, in some of these like other adjacencies. So it's been an interesting, like, process of acknowledging, okay, like this is what we need to do. So
I don't know if you read between the lines there, but yeah, there's going to be a flashlight and that's coming, so you gotta look out for it. And we're dropping something else, and you guys I'll send you the media kit for it. We're dropping something else that's like different.
Really?
We just like expand. Yeah. There's going to be a lot more beyond apparel lights. You guys will see. You'll see.
Dude, can't wait.
Oh, and speaking of which, since we're on a podcast, I'm going to email you our KC playlist, because about like 14, 15 country artists that you might know, like Blake Shelton, Florida Georgia Line, mentions us by name. So
send me that. We'll absolutely get that in. Florida Georgia Line, maybe not so much. You can leave Florida Georgia. You can keep that part of it.
Blake Shelton.
But Blake Shelton, absolutely. Florida Georgia Line's actually been brought up on this podcast way too many times. Yeah,
okay.
in a negative way. In a negative way.
Okay, all right then. Well, I'm gonna share that playlist with
it. Send me the playlist. That'd be awesome. Standard question stuff. We're gonna go each one of you. First up, Alan, what's the best piece of advice that either you've ever received or you would give somebody?
I think right now it would be, whatever's happening in life. It could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. I mean, the good thing is celebrate it. I mean, in some cultures, we're taught not to celebrate it, because we're supposed to be humble and all that. And that's all good. But something happens and it's one step in the 10-step process. I mean, celebrate the wins, but also like remember that when challenging things happen, they pass. And I cannot stress that enough, you know, for a lot of people, because I feel like I lived, you know, in challenging moments. Like it weighed me down so much, you know. Um, but it just don't take that moment, you know, and just drag it out. Like it's gonna pass, you know, and don't take anything too seriously because life is long. It's like kind of like I create a lot of habits right now, and in short is like a lot of people think that about perfection, right? And it's like, okay, I'm gonna start this workout routine, but it's like in our brain, it's like, okay, this workout routine has to be this way. I've got to do it 6 days a week or 5 days a week, otherwise it's not right, you know. But when you think about if you do this habit, you know, for the rest of your life, and you count out how many days there are, and let's just say there's 50,000, 100,000 days, when you miss a few days here and there, and even if that equates to 1,000 out of 100,000, it's nothing. It's insignificant, you know? So I think the best advice I could give is like, when everything's crazy, just be normal. And that came from the Psychology of Money book, you know, about investing, is just don't take any moment too seriously and don't let it weigh too much, because everything will come and everything will pass.
Very good. What about you, Randy?
Yeah, funny you say that. I think it was like a couple of months ago, our HR lady actually presented something at our weekly fundamentals meeting, that it's just part of our KC culture, if you will. And she presented this thing where it was like Finding Nemo and Dory. Dory and the father are trying to find Nemo is like in this deep abyss, and it's dark. And then Dory's all like, "Oh, wait a minute! So you want to go down there because we just like whatever it was, like a piece of something that went down to the abyss." He's all like, "Oh, we just keep swimming, just keep swimming." Like it's Dory's bringing down the father. Like the father was all worried about that moment, but he's like, Dory's like, "Yeah, whatever. It's oblivious. Let's just keep on going. Let's just keep on going."
Yeah.
As the essence, like just keep swimming, right? Because if you get stuck on that one moment, it's like, why be stuck? Just keep on going, and just having that mindset of like, let's continue on. Let's, you know what I mean? Life is too short to not like don't be stuck at that moment. Let's just keep on going. You know what I mean? So for the
you're gonna always be way more successful pivoting than trying to dodge.
Exactly. Exactly.
At least you're moving.
Like the elephant.
Yeah. One piece at a time. When you mentioned at the beginning about the pride thing, right? Not to be prideful, but you've got to be proud, right? You don't have to be boastful, but you can be proud of accomplishment. I've got a theory, you know, and I get a lot of shit from you know, have an ego, you know, or whatever from you guys, you know. It's always
just because I'm in this seat. Don't be.
Well, from your brother, really. From your brother's being an asshole. I have a theory that if it wasn't for, not an ego, but if it wasn't for having pride in an accomplishment, the human race would not even exist. Because that first caveman that made that first kill is like, ugh. That cave woman comes out and is like, what are you making all that noise about? I'm like, I just killed this thing, right? Oh, I like that. That turns me on. Let's procreate. Same thing with fire. I made the first fire. Oh. She comes out. Holy shit, what are you doing? I made fire. You were proud of your accomplishment and you made a noise about it. It took the pride to continue on the human race. If he would have been like, not made a noise, oh, anybody can make fire, be quiet, nice and meek and humble off in the corner or whatever, nobody would give a fuck. Completely useless and off topic, but that's just my theory. It's something. It is important to take a moment and be proud of your accomplishment and don't have shame in it.
So I'm not a doctor, I'm not an expert, but what you just described, what I heard you say was dopamine hit. I mean, that's at the end of the day is when we minimize that dopamine hit, like, you know what I mean? Like the brain is like an engine.
It's a fiend.
I mean, it's a mechanical piece of, you know, and it functions a certain way, and all the stuff, it's all 1 + 1 = 2 for the most part, you know? But what you just described, the pride, it gives you a dopamine hit, and we need that. Like the human needs that, you know? So I totally agree with that.
Favorite car movie? And I'm banning Back to the Future. Neither one of you can pick it.
Shit. Randy, you go first.
Did Fall Guy have KCs on there?
Fall Guy did have KCs.
All right, so you can use that.
Favorite car movie. Shit. Not a movie per se, but I guess it would be a TV from the 80s, like A-Team, the band.
Oh,
It doesn't have KCs, but I'm just saying, like,
A-Team was good.
Yeah.
Good flick.
A-Team, yeah.
I mean, this is the easy go-to. This is the Cherokee XJ from the Goonies.
Okay.
But I mean, the Back to the Future truck is pretty badass. I mean, what am I gonna say? I mean, it's
all
like,
right. All right. It's back on the table. It's back on the table.
But I mean, the Goonies is awesome, man. I mean, like the Fratellis. I mean, I think because KC is seen as, like a family, iconic family brand, but it's like it's on the bad guys Cherokee. I think that's a good one, but I think also like lately, I mean, Randy has a ton of these photos, but not movie, but throwback would be Toyota and KC. Ivan Stewart days. I mean, you have
those ads.
Yellow, orange, red stripes, and it's crazy to think that Pete created this product that was needed, and it had a natural place at a point in time, in motorsports. And, looking at those photos is just to think about the people who did, race and all these things before there was just so much technology. It's like sitting in the 69 Camaro and just sitting there and smelling the oil and the leather and just thinking people built this seat. There was zero, probably very little, technology, involved. Like they built this, it's real. I always appreciate things like that, like it's amazing. So anyway,
we're changing the order up a little bit. Your favorite or most memorable law enforcement interaction story.
Randy's got a good one.
Everybody's had a law enforcement interaction story.
Randy's got a couple.
Here, Randy's
those were left off the resume, but
mine's boring, but it's classic. It's just like, I think I was on the way back from KOH, or I was speeding. And at that time I was driving probably the KC's Bronco with a full KC wrap. I'm guessing I was doing 95, speed limit probably 75. I never get let go on speeding tickets. I'm Asian. I'm usually in a fixed up off-road vehicle. Like I just never get a break, dude. But this guy, like, he just gave me a break, and I remember that he asked me, like, are you driving a company vehicle? I'm like, yes. And I just told him where I was coming from, and it may have been one of our ambassador like get-togethers or whatever. And I just, I said I'm sorry, and the truth was when I'm driving, sometimes like I'm just like, when you drive home, you don't even know like which turns you took.
Yeah, how you got there,
that unconscious brain.
Yeah.
And, you're just decompressing from the event and just like thinking ideas are flowing, and that's no excuse to be unsafe. But, I just told him the truth. And I remember he said, "Can I get your email so I can get some lights?" And we don't have, most of us don't have business cards anymore. We use like a digital business card, but I had some in the center console, and so I gave it to him, and he goes, "You're the CEO of KC HiLites?" Which then the Asian humbleness kicks in. I felt bad, I'm like, fuck, dude. Wish that wasn't on there. We just need to carry like cards that don't say titles. So I mean,
if it's getting me out of a ticket, I'm the CEO.
Yeah, no, but he we chatted, and he's like, dude, you gotta be safer, like, and the cool thing about that is like, our vision is to create unforgettable experiences to empower our spirit to venture further, and that's the thing. When someone does something unexpected that you're not expecting, and it's unforgettable, right? It's one of the times when our beliefs might change. So if it's, I don't care, I'm going to speed or whatever. Like, I remember that story. And before long, it actually like is implanted in my neural pathways where I'm like, oh, I remember that time. I should slow down. Not every time, but that's the power of like sometimes kindness, empathy, understanding, sacrifice. I mean, I feel like that's like when I think about the Navy SEALs, like it's all about sacrifice, right? I mean, they practice a lot, but there's so much trust and respect and mutual communication, and that's how they can operate under a lot of stress and duress. Um, it's like just these unforgettable experiences. That's when people bond the most, in the worst of times, not in the best of times. I mean, we
Right.
do too, but in the worst of times, like we're bonded, and there's something to be said for that. So that was a really, really cool experience. But
Think about
Randy's
the seed that you've planted though with that guy too, because he goes home and he's telling that story. He's telling it to all his bar friends, right? He's telling his wife. He's telling his kids. Oh yeah, and now he's a KC customer for life because his story is he's got a personal connection with the CEO. He pulled the guy over, right? Badass truck. He was super friendly, super nice. The cop, in his benevolence, decided to let you off with a warning. Didn't give you a ticket. His family, and generations to come will be KC customers forever because of that interaction.
I would hope so.
There's
a few other stories. There's a few other stories he could be telling too, but yes,
but a personal connection is a personal connection, and
for sure,
it drives your purchasing decision every time,
for sure. Yeah.
What about you? You're.
Yeah, I don't know if I could top that, but I do have something. I do have something where it actually is related to Casey as well. We're not that bad, guys. We're not. I swear. So at our Williams facility that we've had since like the '70s, our original building, which we still have, we have a fire pit, right? So it was like Overland Expo West right before it. So there was me and a couple of ambassadors that were just camped on our facility. And our facility used to be like they had multiple acres beyond where we were, but then it kind of the community grew around us, like the houses and the McMansions, if you will, that are around us and a golf course. So like I don't know, maybe 50 yards away, you could see this nice house, one of our neighbors, and I turn on the fire pit, but it's propane, and we already know, and it's all legal above water. Everything's good. So we turn it on, and all of a sudden, I see like maybe 30 minutes later, a cop starts rolling into our driveway, our dirt driveway. I'm like, what the heck is going on? There were like two vehicles coming in. And they're like, hey, so we got to complain from one of your neighbors because you can't have it's burn, what is it? You can't have a fire within that area. But they didn't know that it was our fire pit and it was controlled fire. You know what I mean? So it was just
Right.
neighbors. And so the cop was like, look, we know that you guys are here. If you're part of KC, it's cool. Don't even worry about it because it's Williams police officers. They know us. They know that we're there.
Right.
So he's like, and then we were hanging out with Black Rifle Coffee, and sure enough, like some of that they were talking shop, and we got giving free koozies and stuff, and the cop was cool. They're like, hey man, don't even worry about it, dude. Like this is your property. You guys actually have controlled fire. I'm not worried about it. Have a good night. So it was cool. I mean,
Awesome.
it was like they knew that we were part of KC, and it wasn't a big deal. So yeah, but that was my law enforcement story.
Hey, the message that I'm taking away from this is if you're a cop out there, right, and there is a call, right, and it's at a facility that's a brand that just go ahead and go there. The chances are you're gonna get some free shit. If you see a guy speeding in a brand down the road, you're probably gonna be the one to pull him over, right, and trade it for some koozies, trade for some t-shirts.
Dude, the t-shirt goes such a long way.
T-shirts, honestly, t-shirts can make everything right. Branded t-shirts can make everything right, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
All right. First car stories. Sometimes we like to guess. You guys you both born and raised in California?
Yes.
All right. I'm actually going to do it.
They both fired off the Prelude and Hans.
Yeah, but that's not first. Alan's not a Prelude guy. Alan's not a Prelude guy. I've got a different vibe there. So, what years did you graduate high school?
Go ahead, Alan.
97.
Yeah, same with me.
Okay, that's the year I graduated.
You graduated?
Yeah,
Cool.
I did. I graduated in 97. All right, so oh shit, this is gonna be good. Did you buy your own car, or was it a gift to you?
Loaner.
Loaner.
I bought it.
You bought it. Loaner. Oh man, I was going Acura Legend, but I think it's a Camry. It's a Toyota Camry. Randy, you bought it. CRX. I'm going CRX. It would have been Acura Legend, but it was a Toyota Camry because it was a loaner, and I'm going CRX.
Acura Legend, damn.
Hilarious. Mine was a Honda Accord.
Okay.
Same car.
2-door or 4-door?
It was a 4-door, although I did want like a 2-door.
Yeah, everybody wanted the coupe. All right.
I'm going 3 Series Beamer.
Oh, 3 Series Beamer? It's a loaner? Really? Okay.
It's a hand-me-down.
Yeah,
from
that's a
parents.
good car. What is it, Alan?
I'm trying to get the year right, but it's probably like a 1984 Buick LeSabre.
Are you?
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm trying to get the year right because the 83 doesn't look. It looks similar, but
Is that the one that looks
82,
like?
But
looks like a door
it was a
wedge?
4-door. Yeah, I mean it. Okay, I mean the closest I could find is probably like an 83 Buick LeSabre. It was white. I still remember it had like blue, kind of dark blue felt seats, like the kind where if you rubbed it one way, it was like one color.
You could draw stuff on it.
It looks like they have like a patio furniture cushion on the seat.
Yeah. My dad had that. I actually should ask him how the hell, but that was my first vehicle. He loaned that to me when I first got my license. So then it would have been like, I don't know, 90, 95, 96. And I remember driving it to, in high school, I remember driving it to Lowry's for some reason, but the battery was all jacked up. So I did have a driver has a big head. Well, the battery contact had come off. So I had to like put something to perch on the battery contact when I started the vehicle. There's just like so many things that was like so at the time so embarrassing, but like now I think back, I wish I had that vehicle. But yeah, it was a white Buick LeSabre in the 80s, like Buick LeSabre.
You were
4-door though.
Good kid and got good grades and everything, and you got a LeSabre?
No.
Oh,
no,
okay.
I did not get good grades.
Okay.
I was not a good kid.
All right. It makes a lot of sense. Never mind.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to see if he has a photo of it,
Please send it.
I'm gonna send it to you because that was a cool car.
Dude, we don't have 100% success rate, but I would say we probably got at least 80% success rate.
In our minds, we're probably like 40%.
I've never been that far off. I have never been
Honda.
that far off. You could have gave me
Honda though.
I got Honda. Yeah, I that one was absolutely right. I could have guessed 200 more times than I wouldn't have guessed Buick LeSabre.
No, yeah, that's a random. Yeah, that was my first vehicle, but after that, it was like I think like Honda. Oh, Jetta. There was a Jetta. I think the second vehicle was a Jetta. Yeah.
Okay.
Like a 90 something Jetta. But that Buick, man, that was cool. It looks like probably 1983.
You never had an Acura Legend.
No, but my friends did, and it was awesome.
Yeah,
they put the like some HKS exhaust.
A Legend was the
Canon air filter.
I'm gonna find a Legend because the Legend was like that was the shit back in the day.
That was the shit,
Yeah,
and it was pretty. Some of the models were pretty luxurious.
Oh, yeah.
They were nice sedans.
It was high end shit. Yeah,
MSD ignition in it. I mean, that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. But I do miss those. But what's funny about a lot of our age who were import, car guys, they're all getting off-road vehicles. Every single one of them.
really.
Is 4Runner. I mean, they basically all shifted to like 4Runner, Tacomas, off-road, overlands, pre-runner builds. if they have families, like they're all like decking them out for
Yeah.
camping, off-roading. They like 90% of them have moved over into this kind of like off-road genre.
I remember
is
looking at
pretty interesting.
4Runners. I had a couple buddies that had 4Runners in high school, and always cool, but have never looked at purchasing a 4Runner in 20, 25 years. And when my son was turning 16, we started looking at stuff. I'm like, oh man, just in passing, let's look at a 4Runner. Holy shit, those things are expensive. If you looked at Toyota 4Runners are expensive.
I was looking at the new one they came out with, I think last year, that had the Iron Man Ivan Stewart stripe on it.
Yeah.
Just that alone, I was pretty close to buying one.
Yeah, it's like
white with the red, white, and
a
yellow.
loaded TRD with all the kind of stuff, whatever. Shit, you're Raptor money. Like, and I was thinking like, oh, Toyota 4Runner, whatever. Everything's gotten expensive, but I just wasn't prepared for like, oh shit, and they're proud of those things.
It's expensive, man. I mean, I think when vehicles launch nowadays, there's such a huge markup too. So they're all like in the Raptor vicinity, like the GX 550, with a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 markup was also in the 90,000s.
Yeah.
They're high up there. Good thing the Fed cut interest rates today. So it's like catch a break,
Yeah. Try to get yourself a good low mileage Cadillac Escalade V 2023. Have you, holy shit.
You might be able to get them for all the guys that are like $100,000 negative equity.
Escalades always were expensive, I remember, growing up, or getting married and bought my wife a Tahoe, you look at it and you're like, an Escalade's another, $10,000. We don't need to do nothing stupid like that. We got young kids and stuff. But now you look at, an Escalade is literally double the price of a Tahoe.
$100,000.
It's a $220,000 loaded up fucking SUV.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Fellas,
what are some of the things that you guys talk to so many people, on your podcast. I'm curious, like, what are some of the most interesting conversations you guys have had, like, over the years? There's so many, but it's like maybe the in the last 10,
I would say that when you say interesting, the first thing that comes to my mind is Morgan Clark, off-road builder, got some badass Morgan Clark fabrication. He was on, and within the first 5 minutes, he goes into a story about being basically kidnapped at like 16 years old because he was a wayward child, and he went to this like special religious camp in like Utah, and your eyes and face was exactly what ours was. We were like, whoa, and that thing that rolls on for another hour, and it was literally like was not prepared for that at all. And it threw me because I was really wanting to kind of get into the progression of where you're at now and the awesome fabrication and the shit. And it was like, oh shit. Okay. And it was a great conversation. It ended up being a great episode, but that one was definitely one that took us off guard. We talk about it all the time. It was one of the very, very early ones we did. We did Paul Tuttle Sr. from OCC, right? From Orange County Choppers. Mm-hmm. And came in with preconceived notions, unrightfully so, and left that with probably the utmost respect for anybody that we've ever had on this podcast, and just a sense of like, holy shit, that dude is a badass. And if he called and ever needed anything, or anybody ever says anything bad about him in my vicinity, I'll fight him, because it was one of those ones where you're like, oh, dude. You just know the dude's fucking legit. He's a hard worker. He's had great stories. It was a really good one.
I love that. That is really cool, because I think in life, that's the thing about our human brain, right? We make judgments, and it's normal. It's just normal, right? And preconceived notions based on our own backgrounds.
It's to speed things up.
Yeah, exactly. And like when you're surprised, right? And you learn something, and that's that unforgettable experience that we talk about. It's like great, because the next time it changes it. It's still like a hot plate might look like a hot plate, and you might think it's a hot plate, but your brain stops sometimes and says, "Oh, maybe it's not a hot plate," So that's really cool that happened. But the story that always intrigues me too, because these are those people's stories that you guys get to hear, that are just, people are so different, and what happens to them are like there's infinite things,
Yeah.
and they all shape people. And that's pretty cool. So
It's
really appreciate you guys doing that. Like,
absolutely. I appreciate you doing it. We love the brand, but we love having these stories because we really like to connect with the brands that we have a lot of respect for and want to meet the guys behind them. But at the same time, I think it's important. Like we said at the very beginning, I said it about the cop that pulled you over. A personal relationship with the people that are at those companies means more than any marketing that you could ever do, right? Marketing is important. Marketing's got to get you out in front of there, but a personal relationship means everything. And that's where it gets it. Oh, you're talking about another one. I know that we got to go, but the Aaron that owns Smoke Wagon Whiskey, he's out of Nevada, right? He was on. Not at all what we expected. And the stories of shit that he and how he got to where he's at, that's a really good one for people to listen to because he was a damn, like, worked on a movie set and was like a grip and he wanted to be an actor and he was this. And then all of a sudden he's there with a bar. And then he was like, fuck it, we're going to do a whiskey company and the different stuff. It was what a ride. And there's just, I don't know. It's weird in life talking about human brain when you can be pleasantly surprised and the takeaway and how long that memory stays. Then there can be an expectation and a letdown, right? Of like, well, this restaurant was supposed to be really good and it wasn't that great. And a lot of that has to do with because you built it up too much or it just really didn't live up to the hype and how long that memory lasts. But then there's the one that lasts forever. That's I didn't give this guy a lot, or I didn't think this restaurant was going to be that great, or I didn't think this experience would be all that good. I didn't think this trip with the family was really going to live up to that. And when it blows your mind and it absolutely exceeds all expectations, how long that memory lasts. And it's always forever. And that's wild that when something exceeds your expectations, when you didn't really give it anything, that's burned in your memory versus a letdown, versus a bad experience, or versus a mediocre experience, or versus anything like that. It's always weird.
Yeah. I'm going to have to quote you on that. As we go into our strategic planning, I mean, that's a lot of what I think companies can do better, is, you hear people talk about understanding their customer and all that. And a lot of it comes back to expectation management, how you surprise and delight someone, on a podcast or in product or whatever. I mean, sometimes it can be done in the stories, but sometimes it's just the presence. I mean, there's so many great levers we can pull, and that's a good point, is like keeping focused on how we can surprise and delight and even manage the expectations of customers across the product. That's cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Guys, it's been absolutely fucking awesome. Everything was legit. All the praises that we gave you, because seriously, KC it's amazing brand. Honestly, it's the Coca-Cola of the lighting industry. Hell, it might be the Coca-Cola of the whole aftermarket. Y'all going to be at SEMA?
I will be at SEMA for the first time in 4 years.
Oh.
We will not have a booth, but I will be there. Yeah, if you guys are there, love to meet up.
We're having a
Smoke Wagon.
Yeah, let's do it. We're having a big party on Thursday night. I'll send you an email and get you some tickets and all that. You'll have to come.
Great. That'll be great. Meet in person.
Absolutely. See you soon. Appreciate it, fellas.
It's been awesome.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Bye.
Appreciate it. That was really good.
Yep. I was not expecting the deep dive on all that stuff. It was cool to see their thought process and the way they run the company, and it probably shows in how well the brand is done over the years. And
it absolutely shows, and it's not like a by accident or there's like some, it shows that it's thought out and it's for a reason. Very, very refreshing to see.
Memorable moments. Are we going to have that Waffle House as one burned into your mind? Is the where were we? Nashville Waffle House?
Do you know where this came from?
No, I don't.
That's why it's here on this podcast today. So, one, I guess we have to address, we're going to do a tequila review. So, we're drinking tequila.
Oil and tequila?
Oil and tequila. A lot of things are different. Your brother's not here, Jeremy Gerber. That's why you're sitting in his seat.
Yeah, this is weird being over.
Are we going to talk about this over 40 amateur high diving thing that he's into? It's gotten weird. I mean, everybody's got their thing.
I think he's doing it for the bathing suit. I'm going to be honest.
Well, he's wore that bathing suit before he did the high diving, but I mean, he did it a couple of times, and I was like, all right, it's cool, you're diving and stuff. But he keeps getting higher, and now they're doing like these amateur events. Like who at 43 years old drives to Milwaukee to do a high dive event that has to miss a podcast?
He's got some goals. I think things he wants to cross off his list.
Absolutely.
Maybe he missed out in high school and younger. I don't know.
Fucking weird. So today I go to Island Lake facility. I'm checking in with all the assembly guys. Joey, our newer hire, right? McPherson College grad. He loved the Adam Banks episode. He comes up and he's like, I got something for you. It's like, oh man, you didn't have to get me anything. He pulls out the Waffle House mug. He said, I listened to an episode and you talked about the Waffle House mug. He said, and I thought to myself, I'm pretty sure I've got one. And when I was in college, I'm not going to tell you how I got it, but I got one. And he said, I wanted you to have it. I said, dude, you honestly have no idea how big of a deal this is. This is one of the greatest gifts.
It's a solid gift.
Yeah, it's an absolutely solid gift. It's a Waffle House mug. It's got a great feel in the hand.
Great mouthfeel.
So I wanted to bring it on. I wanted to drink tequila out of it. I was going to drink whatever.
Shitty burnt coffee out of it.
I'll drink shitty burnt coffee out of it later, but kicking it off, that it was befitting of today. I wanted to tell Joey very much thank you. Waffle House mug. Jared's going to be jealous because he doesn't have one. I could have.
You're probably not going to rub that in his face, are you?
Oh, 100% rub in his face. I could have procured my own by various manners 100 times. More than that.
Ellie could have procured one for you.
I know. I just don't. I've never felt right. In my conscious, I just can't. I can't take nothing.
That's the line.
Somebody can take it for me and give it to me, but at a different time that I didn't know about, I feel fine. But I just can't take something from a restaurant or from anybody. I can't steal. I just can't steal. You got to tell us about the tequila because I don't know anything about it. I just know this is pretty damn good.
Yes, this is Jeremy Katz, phenomenal upholstery artist.
Yep.
Another tequila aficionado. Me and him have been bouncing some stuff back and forth on what he's into. He's been into it a lot longer than me. So last time he was out here, he brought a few bottles, and I've been secretly taking pulls off of them and not letting you guys know.
Oh, appreciate that.
Yeah, no, because you weren't really that into it, and I was getting shit for drinking tequila and not drinking bourbon. But yeah, solid.
Just because we needed something to give you shit about.
Solid change. So this is a Maestro Double 50 Cristiliano Extra Anejo Tequila.
Maestro Dobel.
Sounds better when you say it. The Cristiliano is like a new thing where they, I think, charcoal filter the tequila to take the color out of it after it's aged.
It's fucking clear like vodka.
Yeah,
it's clear.
Yeah. A little bit weird because you age it to get the color and the flavor, and then they charcoal filter to take the color out of it. But I guess it retains the flavor. Maybe add something to it.
You know what they can do? Charge more for it.
They can, yeah.
Yeah, that's another step.
But yeah, this is an absolute banger.
It's great.
Yeah. Huge fan. A little bit of that kind of sweet vanilla flavor, not overpowering. I could drink this. Didn't even need ice. Could just crush a bottle of this all day long.
It's really, really good. I like the sweet vanilla, but it still has. It doesn't go. It's got sweet, but it doesn't go too sweet. It's still got like a savory. Yeah, it's still got like a smoky kind of. You know, I always say black. When I'm talking about tequila, I know very little about it. But if they go like peppery, black pepper, I like that. I really like that. And it's still got some of that on the backside and a little bit of sweet. I liken the tequila. Sometimes you just like that mouthfeel over a bourbon. I still love bourbon. I'm going to drink all the whiskey. But whiskey is like a Gatorade feel in my mouth, where tequila is like a water feel. Sometimes it's just like a little bit cleaner and doesn't have the coat the palate. Yeah. It's like once you taste it and swallow it, like there's no after. With whiskey, it's there. And that's not a bad thing. It's just different. Sometimes it's different. Today was, you know what?
You brought a couple of
I did.
out.
I said, let's fuck with some tequila. Right. Your brother can do
I like how
amateur
it's your
over
idea.
40 high diving, then we can drink tequila. Yeah, 100%. Because if you do it, then we're going to make fun of you about it.
Shot down some fucking oil and whiskey. We can't drink tequila.
That was your brother.
That was you.
He's an asshole.
That was you.
Well, he enables me to be an asshole. Great episode. Obviously, you don't have to tell anybody to check out KC HiLites because all the cool guys have them. See you again next week.